All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Enough to Keep Going. This is Enough to Keep Going episode number 137. 137. Wow. For the week of April 2nd, if you are watching this from sometime in the future, we are deep in the middle of safer at home lockdowns, and we have not yet seen the full spike in the COVID-19 situation. So all of that is to say, it's intense. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of juggling and balancing that all of us are doing at this time in terms of family and work and social safety and anxiety. And what we're hoping tonight is we can set that on a side. We can put that cartridge back in its case. We can take a minute and dive into the gaming industry. And we know that it is entertainment. It is designed to be entertainment. This is not life or death in a time when there is literally life and death. But we also know that sometimes we need an outlet. Sometimes we need a space to to express ourselves, to enjoy, to laugh, and uh, just share our entertainment, share our hobbies, and share our friendships. And that's hopefully what we're doing tonight here on Enough to Keep Going. Every other week on Enough to Keep Going, we are coming at you with a deep dive episode where we're going to be diving into the last week and a half, 2 weeks of news, at least news within the gaming industry. And on the opposite weeks, we are here with our GX shows, with our game experience shows, kind of our playlist. We've got assignments. We've got our assignment for next week, if you come back and join us, is to take one of the big releases of this spring. As more and more releases kind of have gotten pushed out of the spring, there's a few still here, and compare them to others within the series or within the developer, and see how they compare. So we'll be looking at that next week. But this week we've got a series of stories, and actually we've got way more than we can probably handle in the hour, but we're gonna do our best. And with me tonight to help dig through all of these is our co-host SwissGuard. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, hanging in there.
Okay.
Well said. I mean, no matter what, video games are just hobby and entertainment. Doesn't have to have a serious real life situation for the contrast. I mean, no matter what, it's nice to have, like you said, a hobby and outlet, and a nice place to cultivate friendships. So I definitely appreciate being able to come on here and chat with you guys each week.
Great. And joining us to chat with us and to hopefully we'll find a soapbox to ramble about a little bit here tonight. Agasicles, Stamus, how are you, sir?
I'm good. So we're here. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. It's weird. It's just weird. So we last week we talked about how we just had the first kind of bumper crop of games for 2020 actually arrived that we've been playing. So it's almost as if the year, unfortunately, didn't start until the month of March, and then of course the health crisis happened. So ditto for news. It's been kind of a weird, funky news cycle these first couple of months. But amazingly, despite the health crisis, there seems to be a large train wreck of news that has all piled up in the last week, which we look forward to discussing tonight.
So let's start sifting through that train wreck. And last week we had the Nintendo Direct Mini. So it was 28 minutes of Nintendo, fire hose announcements. Some of these things we knew about. Some of the things were new. Unfortunately, Osiris Prime is not here tonight to put on his Nintendo fanboy hat, but we'll have to do our best to parse through this news as well. So, really, what I want to do, gentlemen, is given the amount of announcements here, I want to kind of quickly hit on some surprises, some new things, and then turn it over to you guys to see if there were things that stood out in the announcements. So we get a date on Xenoblade Chronicles. It's coming out at the end of May, in theory. Everything Nintendo did the wise statement at the beginning of the direct that everything could be delays could slip, things could change. The situation is fluid. But right now we've got Xenoblade Chronicles being projected for the end of May. Into the Depths, which was an Apple Arcade game. I don't know if you had a chance to play that, Agasicles.
Can I break in really quick, TV? So is that Xenoblade Chronicles is is it a remaster, a re-release? Because we had this in the launch year of the Switch, right? This is the definitive edition now.
So Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, came out not in the. It came. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was the launch year of the Switch. The Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, was part of the Project Rainfall, the 3 games that got ported over to North America and Europe toward the end of the Wii life cycle. So this is 2010. It also came out on the new 3DS. So this is a definitive edition remaster, kind of using that engine from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It's going to include, one of the things that was new here is that it is going to include kind of an epilogue of one of the characters. And so that is one of the additions. So it is a remaster of a 10-year-old game. I'm going to keep going through here in terms of some of the new things. The Shinseka Into the Depths is a Capcom Metroidvania kind of underwater sea exploration game. It launched on Apple Arcade back in the fall, and it's getting its first console release on the Switch. We got Ring Fit, rhythm mode for Ring Fit. And we get a little bit of an announcement related to a new Smash Brothers character, one of the ARMS fighters. And Clubhouse Games, the Nintendo DS game from back in the late 2000s. It is coming out with a new iteration on the Nintendo Switch. So these were, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones here that were surprises. We knew Panzer Dragoon was coming out. We did not know that it was coming out as of the Nintendo Direct. We get a re-release of Star Wars Pod Racer, Star Wars Racer for the Nintendo 64. And some other things that we knew about, like Jedi Academy, like Bravely Default 2, some Animal Crossing pieces, some more DLC. So, any of those announcements stand out to you guys as good positioning from Nintendo's front, or kind of surprise gets?
Well, you left out, in my opinion, the most important stuff, which was the 2K games that are coming to the platform. So we get
Tell us more.
So we get XCOM 2 Collection, Borderlands Legendary Collection, and BioShock 1 and 2. Essentially a BioShock collection consisting of 1 and 2 remastered and BioShock Infinite. Actually, I guess, maybe those are available. The way they're listed, at least in the Destructoid article, is that 1 and 2, you can buy them as 1 and 2 remastered, Infinite as separate purchases, or you can buy the BioShock the collection. But yeah, those appear. I mean, those to me are pretty big hits. I mean, you said we knew about Jedi Academy. I guess I hadn't been tracking, and Panzer Dragoon, of course, Shadow dropped that day as well. Those to me were the big deals.
Yeah, I think one of the other ones, that was kind of a surprise, along with the ports for BioShock and XCOM 1 and 2 and the Borderlands series, is also that we're getting an EA game on the platform, that we're getting Burnout Paradise Remastered here as well.
That was a mistake.
Well, say what you will about Burnout Paradise. I would say that there are very few racing games on the Switch, so it's not a crowded market for.
You're gonna get just Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. You need 2 racing game announcements. TV.
Well, the unfortunate reality is, while we have negative feelings about Burnout Paradise, It is a popular. I perceive that it is a popular game and fairly nostalgic now that studio no longer exists. I'll also throw in and mention, and I guess these were maybe things that we knew about, but they were dated at the Direct Mini. Saints Row 4 Reelected, which dropped, I guess, last week.
Yep.
Trials of Mana, Minecraft Dungeons, which has since been dated, and I think we're going to talk about later. Coming out, I guess, summer technically of 2020.
Yeah.
And strangely, Warhammer 40,000 Mechanicus. Swiss, are you familiar with this title? I have this title on PC. Are you familiar with it?
No, I mean, I'm familiar with the Warhammer universe, kind of, but no, I'm not familiar with that title.
This to me is a strange selection because it's a turn-based. It essentially plays a little bit kind of, I don't want to say like Civ, but it's a turn-based Warhammer game, primarily focused around combined arm units with your centerpiece being your mechs. It is at really, really high res on a PC, so that the units are kind of really small. So I just am not exactly sure how that's gonna appear and play out. I haven't played it in a while, but I also seem to remember that the colors they're not really bright, so it's kind of this, I don't want to say it's a brown game, but it's kind of a brownish gray game. So again, I just kind of wonder how well that's going to play on a Switch, displayed on what unfortunately for a lot of people is a 4K TV, where I personally think the Switch's sometimes 720p to 1080p resolution doesn't play as well, doesn't look as nice for lower res games. So that's a weird choice. It'll be interesting to see how that plays.
For me, I was excited to see some of the gameplay for Bravely Default 2. I've not played the first Bravely Default, but I got some nice Octopath Traveler warm fuzzies when I saw it. Even though I know the battle systems look a little different, but still, it looked very nice. I also enjoyed one of the first ones was this like kind of puzzle game, Good Job. And I don't know if that's been on other platforms or not. It was new to me, but it looked cute.
New. It's a new release. Yep.
Yeah, it looked cute and intriguing and fun. And then Kings. Go ahead.
And appropriate in this time, right? Because it kind of models. Doesn't it model kind of like life in an office?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that might unfortunately be the most office interaction that people are getting in this day and time.
Right. The last game was King's Bounty 2, and I haven't played, or I mean, quite honestly, I've never heard of the King's Bounty series, and that might be bad, but it looked like an intriguing kind of strategy type game, so RPG experience. So yeah, I think it was a typical Nintendo Direct Mini where you get a lot thrown at you, and there's going to be some things that you find in there that make you excited to be a Nintendo gamer.
Yeah, very much so. I had a chance to already play the Bravely Default 2 demo. Spent maybe an hour or so with that. I've played both the Bravely Default and Bravely Second on 3DS. It feels very much the same way in terms of the mechanics of the, defaulting and defending to build up additional turns and being able to kind of bank those turns and spend them to make multiple turns in a row. A lot has been made about the difficulty here, and it kind of throws you in mid-game, but it tells you it's going to be difficult. One of the other things that I've also had a chance to play around with the Ring Fit rhythm game, which works kind of like a cross between Beat Saber and Guitar Hero in terms of being able to move the ring side to side to hit things on a note highway, more or less, and to do the appropriate exercise, whether you're pulling out or squeezing in. It after a song or two, I was working up pretty good sweat, so it was kind of fun. One of the other games that we haven't talked about yet was one that was announced back at E3 last year, which was the Ningala, the kind of Splatoon-like 3D action stylistic game of like paint and punk kids running around. It's coming out at the end of May, and now we know that it's also free to play. So be interesting to see what that actually looks like and what the hooks are there. A lot of stuff packed into 28 minutes. That's for sure. And we got a couple other things that go along with these announcements here. We got some follow-up information on the 2K ports that Agasicles was talking about. Like the NBA 2K series, this will be on a smaller cart, and then with a much larger download for the games. Whether you'll be able to download those games individually or have to download the whole collection, but it has the potential of making sure that you're going to be, BioShock is going to need an additional 16 gigs. Borderlands sounds like it's up into the 35 gigs. So it will be it'll be interesting to make sure that people who are purchasing these, whether you're buying them digitally or within the physical cart, make sure that there's enough room left on that as well. One other game that's going to need a download as it comes in is Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds, the Obsidian game that came out this fall, the kind of Fallout-like space adventure, has finally given a date, the first week of June, and it's going to need a patch and a download as well, but it's the first time that we've gotten a significant and a specific date for Outer Worlds as well. Gentlemen, we had all that Switch news, and then this week we have a little bit of some Switch rumors around what Nintendo was planning to do for Mario's 35th birthday. So,
just before we get onto that, I guess I want to.
Yeah.
Do we
jump back, please.
Do we want to kick around at all whether or not? We're all Switch owners. How do you feel about the notion of going to pay for a physical instance of a game and then come home and be faced with roughly the same size of a download as you would normally expect from making a digital purchase? Since I think all of us kind of suffer from a bit of cognitive overload in having to manage the storage space and memory space of a Nintendo Switch.
Well, it's annoying for me. Like, I don't understand it other than just I don't know. I don't understand how you can't have most of the assets or whatever on the cartridge. I have filled up my beefy SD card on my Nintendo Switch, so I've already started having to do the games where you remove this game from the library, from your installations, and doing a little bit of musical chairs. So I can only imagine what somebody, even with like a normal size card. I mean, what is the Switch launch with? Like was it a 32 gig?
32, yeah.
So I mean, it seems like these games wouldn't even fit on the Switch if you bought it. Somebody goes to this, an average Switch owner that just gets it from a Target or a Walmart and then wants to play BioShock or I guess which is the one that said it was a 35 Borderlands 35 gigabit download. Like, that won't fit. So it's going to probably be an aggravating experience for them.
Yeah, I know that this is not unique, that it's been multiple years where the 2K basketball series has done this. If you purchased Overwatch, there was signage on the outside of the box that you were only getting a code for the download. At the same time, you get something like Witcher 3, which has both DLCs all on a single cart, right? So the technological ability to do this exists. It's a matter of, one, if the publisher is going to use the smaller cart or the larger cart, and also I think there's got to be some kind of to what degree of optimization is going into this in order to get those assets to fit within the size cart, or just kind of a quick and dirty port to some degree as well.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, part of the economic optics on this is there, like you mentioned, DB, there is a licensing cost and fee, I believe, increase that's associated with the larger size cart. So the larger a cart you want to use, you can choose to use it, but your licensing fee, I think, increases, and that eats into your profit margin. And so vendors opt to go with the smaller size cards in order to keep more money in their pockets, and then issue those things as a download. Do we know how big it? So the Switch comes with a 32 gig micro SD card in the box. What does the Switch Lite come with? Do we know? Does it come with the same 32 gig or?
I think so. Yeah, it comes with, because it's internal. There's not a card that comes with it. It's just the internal memory is 32. I'm almost positive. I don't remember it being a larger hard drive or a shorter or a smaller hard drive.
So if you're
I heard
dealing,
somebody typing there. If you're fact checking,
I think Swiss is on it. So yeah, if you're on if you're on a Switch Lite and you only have the internal memory, you're, you're further impinged, right? Because then that part of your operating system is eating up that space. So
Yeah,
I don't
it's
even
32 gigs.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I enjoy the Borderlands series, and having them portable would be a lot of fun. I also know that the precision of the Joy-Cons in terms of analog sticks is probably not what I would want for a first-person shooter. The ability to do some strategy games with XCOM certainly seems, on the go or sitting on the couch, seems a little more in my fitting for the system. But at the same time, if you're a Nintendo platform holder, these are games that you've not necessarily had a chance to experience before, and also seems like these are games that after the initial launch are going to have some pretty significant sales to them as well. So, any other thoughts before we move on to a game or games that will probably not have significant sales price reductions at all, because they are first-party Nintendo games? So there is that rumor about Mario's 35th birthday. Not even a rumor at this point. It's been kind of confirmed out of multiple places, and a lot of it seems like it was going to be tied with Nintendo's E3 presentation, which is obviously not going forward in the same way that they had planned. But what it says is, again, thinking of it as Nintendo or Mario All Stars, the second Mario All Stars 3D, to be able to collect, potentially remaster the 3D Mario games, Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Galaxy 2. There's a variety of conversation about how this will be packed into a cart or if these will be individual downloads. There is a separate news story related to the fact that Mario 3D World from the Wii U will be getting a re-release. All of this kind of stems in with Mario's birthday, tying in with the Mario movie coming from the Minions studio, and the launch of the Mario Nintendo World Park at Universal Studios in Japan. So kind of a lot of Mario swirling around. I think, again, for me, these would be a lot of fun to play on the Switch. My question will be how they're packaged and what that looks like. Any thoughts here, gentlemen, or are we ready to tip our hat to Mario and jump on to the next news story?
I guess the curious thing that I've seen going around the web is that this is the competitive move that Nintendo makes in order to stay relevant in a year when the PlayStation 5 and Xbox, One Series X or Xbox Series X are launching, because people will be hyper focused on the return of Mario and not so much on comparisons of hardware. this will again be the same story as last year, right? What did we get? Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, right, which was essentially exactly the same game, right, from decades past, while concurrently not performing well from a graphic perspective when it initially launched. So I expect these Mario titles to be better. I expect there to be some degree of wailing and gnashing of teeth from Switch owners who have purchased these games before, and as you mentioned, DBQ will be sold at regular MSRP for a Nintendo Switch game with little to no discount or packaging. Swiss, do you expect that there will be? I mean, do you expect this distribution to be split, and that we'll get some titles that will be retail releases and digital, while some may just show up on the Switch Online service? And do you expect any of them would then be freebies that show up that way?
I think a few of them are already there, right? We see a lot of in their little history of Mario. We see, they have Super Mario World and Super Mario Land 2 and stuff. I gotta think some of them are already on Nintendo Online. So
if you're in the Nintendo Online, yeah, Mario World, Mario 3, 2, I think Lost Levels might have come already as well.
Right. So basically, from my perspective, the interesting stuff is everything that happens post SNES. So N64 and on. And as of now, I haven't heard of anything with Nintendo Online service for those types of titles. So my guess would be, I don't know. I feel like some of the older stuff they can maybe put in a bundle together, and then some of the other stuff is going to be individual titles. I think it's really probably going to depend on the actual titles.
I also wonder how they. Go ahead.
I thought you were going to stake your claim that they were going to be, even if bundled, that they were going to be retail releases sold at a less than preferred price point. As you're going to scream, and the Nintendo price gouging continues.
No, I think they certainly will be. I think even if you bundle 64 Sunshine and the 2 Galaxies together on a cart with a box and maybe an art book or some other type of Nintendo knickknack. When Mario All Stars came out the first time for the Wii, it also included a CD with a music compilation. Kind of a sampling of soundtrack. So I could see them packaging it together and certainly selling it at full price. I'm also curious how they remap some of the controls for Galaxy, because so much of that was waggle and pointer focused, to be able to work on the Nintendo Switch Lite when you don't have the ability to use any type of pointer. How they end up remapping some of those things as well.
Yeah, I think it's really going to depend on how much remastering is done. You paid full price for Link's Awakening, but that was, it was the same game, but the graphics were completely overhauled. And they added some new level features and whatnot. But if they're just kind of porting the games, I kind of feel like we are going to be able to get it at a cheaper price point, but we'll see. I can't imagine. I mean, even when how much did Super Mario 64 when it was released for the Nintendo DS? I mean, that was probably that wasn't a $60 game because it was a DS title, right? So
it was a full price DS title, which I think at that time would have either been $30 or $40.
Right. Which,
yep.
I don't know, $40 for Super Mario 64 still seems steep today.
So before I launch into but the control scheme was so great with the stick analog. Anyhow, let's move from one remaster discussion to another. So this week, the much rumored and quietly confirmed Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 remaster came out for the Sony PlayStation 4. announced and dropped all in the same kind of day. If you are a PlayStation 4 owner, if you are an Xbox or PC owner, you are waiting until the end of April so that PlayStation can have a 30-day window of exclusivity. It's not drastically different than many of the Call of Duty map packs and DLC. I guess not seasons really. This was before seasons, but the rounds of DLC that came out over the last couple years with not only Call of Duty but other Activision games like Destiny. One of the things that is missing here is the multiplayer, and one of the reasons for this is it sounds like they're looking to double down the existing platform of Call of Duty Modern Warfare Warframe. Not only the multiplayer game there, but the idea of not kind of separating the multiplayer base to add in some of the maps from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 into the current game rather than giving it a separate game to kind of split the player base a little bit more, which to me, I think actually makes sense a little bit more than it did a couple years ago when they did Modern Warfare, the original remaster, or Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, that had both the campaign and the multiplayer in it. And that came out around the same time as Infinite Warfare, so 2016, that those came bundled together. Thoughts on this, gentlemen? Either concerns over the window of exclusivity, or about the fact that multiplayer is going to be incorporated into the current year of Call of Duty rather than this kind of standalone campaign.
I actually don't have any problems with that. It makes sense to me from a business perspective, like you said. Why split your multiplayer base? You want to have a nice broad pipe for DLC and microtransactions to go, and if you're splitting people up, I think that's going to dilute it for everybody. So that makes sense. The game's only $20 for the campaign, so it's not like they're, I would say, price gouging for that the remastered campaign experience. So no, I think everything is fine. And I also don't really even have a problem with having a PlayStation exclusivity for a month, because if they can get a fat stack of cash and all they have to do is delay it 30 days for the Xbox and PC, it makes sense. I mean, it's not that big a deal to wait a little bit for a few weeks for those players that are only on Xbox or whatever.
Well, that was very kind and conciliatory. So, no stir in the pot here from you, Swiss.
Well, I mean, there's not really much to argue with from a business. I mean, I know people want to like to criticize, to be polite about it, these large publishers, but I don't think there's anything nefarious there. We're not, this isn't Battlefront 2, so.
Yeah, but yet, as you were kind of alluding to, Swiss, people tried to make an issue out of this, and I guess what frustrated me more than anything is it wasn't gamers, it was the media. So like prominent editors at IGN tried to make a to-do of this on Twitter, and I'm like, first of all, you guys know better than we do that, first of all, the reason for this is because the stipulations that went along with exclusivity back when these games were originally released are still wound into these business deals. So when they're remastered, there's still an opportunity for Sony, who had some exclusivity windows associated with Modern Warfare 2, that they were able to exercise those, or at least make a case that they wanted some wiggle room on an exclusivity window. That plus whatever cash that they ponied up obviously won out the day. But my thing is again, I was a little frustrated with them trying to make an issue of it, because it's a thing to make an issue of it now because there's really not a lot for gamers to be angry about, right? As I mentioned, I'm not happy about the health crisis, but a positive byproduct is, there's more. I have stopped posting links about publishers and digital distributors who are giving away free games because it's just too much. It is literally every 5 minutes that some new thing is being posted that somebody is giving away something for free. So for people to try and make an issue out of the fact that there's a 30-day exclusivity window, Swiss, the first thing that I immediately hooked onto was what you mentioned last week, which I don't wholly incorporate into like how I approach games, but the thing you mentioned last week is I'm an adult and I can be patient, right? If a game comes out on a system, I can wait until it comes out on the system I want to play. It's not as if Xbox gamers who have Xbox Game Pass and PC gamers don't have enough stuff in their backlog to play. There is absolutely no immediate desire or need, I should say desire, there's no need to have to be entitled to Modern Warfare 2 on those two platforms right now. They're not new games. They're not a new critical release for 2020. It's not going to box you out of the Game of the Year discussion. So, it was kind of infuriating to see, again, prominent editors try and make a case that this was Activision, mostly Activision, which I felt was also inappropriate because it's really Sony, that somehow that they tried to paint them in the picture of being, anti-consumer or unfriendly or not inclusive for implementing an exclusivity deal. I thought it was kind of preposterous. The multiplayer maps, as you mentioned, Swiss, I'm right on board with you. It makes sense. There's a slight nuance, and I'm sorry, I'll say this one thing in the DB, and I'll let you get in.
No, it's okay. You're good. Keep going.
Yeah, there's a slight nuance in. I don't know that if I were Activision, I may have couched my terms a little or caveated my term a little more carefully about in terms of we don't want to split the player base, because the player base is already split. It's split between Black Ops and it's split between the Modern Warfare pile, right? So, and really, I mean, even there are players who still like playing World War II, which I think was from Sledgehammer.
Yes.
I think so. So, so those player bases are kind of already split across those three primary franchises in very similar fashion to how the Need for Speed community was kind of split across, like, Underground versus the regular one versus, like, the Hot Pursuit Rivals crowd. So that is okay, but I completely agree with them that you want to keep the Modern Warfare base kind of together, and there's little to no reason to enable the multiplayer on Modern Warfare 2 and then have that working on, a bunch of standalone servers by itself away from what everybody in the Modern Warfare plus Warzone player base is playing.
I think the interesting thing about the player base here for me is that this is the first time that Activision is kind of acknowledging trying to keep everybody, not necessarily keep them together, but to build on the existing platform rather than to migrate people year to year. Whether that was whatever the battle royale mode last year in Black Ops 4, now to the battle royale mode now in Warzone. If they continue to kind of move people from game and platform to platform year after year, or just start to really build in something that is more seasonal, more kind of open, that allows people to stay with the same initial install, but to continue to do rounds and chapters and seasons, or however they do that. So be curious to see what that looks like as we move into the fall as well, and potentially, as many things have not only the potential but the reality of getting pushed and delayed because of the health crisis, that this may actually position Call of Duty to not have to worry about a big release, but to continue to support their platform with Warzone and with their existing multiplayer as well. So let's move from one non-issue to another and move over to Xbox and the news story from yesterday that the Xbox controller, Xbox Series X controller, is still going to use AA batteries. So the idea of news outlets making stories out of small potatoes when there's not a lot to report on, gentlemen, I don't know that this is an issue. In some ways, actually, I guess I'd prefer the ability to swap out batteries rather than having my lithium battery in my PlayStation 4 controller eventually lose its charge and have to lose the entire controller. Um, but this is kind of one of the, I don't know if it's a distinction, but it's the slow trickle of information around the Xbox Series X, which continues to kind of keep it in the news and in the news streams week after week as well. Any thoughts on if you prefer your batteries or third-party Nyko recharge packs? Otherwise, we've got other Xbox stories to talk about as well.
Now, my only 2-second blurb was I personally prefer the play and charge kit, but I completely acknowledge that for some people, rather than putting out for that $20 piece of gear, that it's easier, more convenient for them to just grab some AA. So it makes sense completely to me what Microsoft is saying, that they want to support both.
Yeah. Yep.
My PlayStation 4 controller is always out of charge, which is frustrating. And then when I try to use my Xbox One controller on PC, the batteries are dead and I can't find AA's. So there's frustration either way.
So in your household, no matter what battery charge solution, it's never the right one. So,
No.
But let's stay on the mic here because we've got two other games that in your household I think are going to be appropriate. We got the announcement that Nier Automata is coming out on Game Pass. I know you played it on PS4. We also got this week the announcement that the original Nier was going to be getting a remaster. And also, as alluded to earlier in the podcast from Agasicles, Minecraft Dungeons, which is coming out both on the Switch but also on Game Pass for Xbox and PC, is coming out at the end of May and will be part of Game Pass on both platforms. I know your sons, or your family, just like my sons, have definitely had some Minecraft love and passion. Do you think Minecraft Dungeons connects with the building creating group, or is this kind of a way for their parents to play Minecraft as well because it's a little more Diablo action RPG quest based?
It definitely makes it more interesting for me. However, the thing that I notice about at least my family with Minecraft and when they play with their cousins and whatnot is that the focus isn't on construction. They do some of that, but then they'll play tag or something within the game world. So there's just a lot of jumping around, and it's the flexibility, I think, that makes it fun for them. And I think just being in the Minecraft universe, I know it's it's Diablo-esque, but just having the Minecraft coat of paint on it is, they've known about it since the announcement at I guess last year's E3, and they've been waiting for it to come out since then. So it's nice to finally have a hard release date, and we'll be picking it up.
Yeah, I think it'll be a nice couch co-op type of game as well. So, ready to move on? I guess, please, any other thoughts here on Xbox before we move over to PC?
No, I would just look really forward to Minecraft Dungeons being released because I'm sick and tired of seeing a post every 2 days about how ray tracing is being implemented in Minecraft, which I think is of dubious value. But great, just please get it over and done with so we can stop seeing that in the news cycle.
Fair enough. So let's round the corner here to our last set of stories. We had Epic, as we were talking about Call of Duty becoming a platform and taking more on the Fortnite model. Epic is taking on a little bit more of the Activision model and becoming a publisher for a series of existing studios, Remedy, Playdead, and Gen Design, that they're going to be covering up to 100% of the costs, offering up some 50-50 profit shares, not a lot of ready announced titles here, but just that they are moving into the publishing support sector with these studios as well. I guess because you initially put this message up on the boards. Any thoughts here? I mean, I think it is. For me, I'm interested in this not so much in. I mean, these are existing studios that wouldn't necessarily have too much of a hard time finding another publisher if they needed it. But I think to me it feels more like it is a strong play for Epic to continue to kind of carve out and make a case for the Epic Game Store, the Epic Launcher as another viable platform within the PC hub.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm neither for nor against it. I mean, I have no problems with it. It'll be interesting because, as you mentioned, it's just a curious pivot, right, in the game industry world. I think the most promising thing from my perspective is the partnering with Remedy, who makes some of the more interesting games that kind of fall into my wheelhouse. At least with Control and Max Payne. Alan Wake is still a thing that's in my backlog, which I didn't jump on board with back in the day. But as I've mentioned before, the fact that it was made available for free on the Epic Store caused me to grab it. Interesting that happened, and then the next thing, there's a publishing partnership with Remedy. So maybe those discussions were started back then.
And Control was Epic Store exclusive. And so I would think that those discussions have been going on for a significant, or at least the groundwork was laid last year.
Yeah, there's a friendship there, obviously. Go ahead.
Yeah, it will be, but again, Fortnite isn't necessarily the most innovative thing in the industry now, 2 years since it made its big mark, but it would be interesting to see if we start seeing, say, Remedy IP characters showing up in Fortnite. It would be kind of cool to see Max Payne show up there, particularly if they found out a way to implement his bullet time as like a special feature or whatever within the game for a limited time. But just would be interesting to see what crossovers are available.
I question whether the Fortnite player base would know who Max Payne is, but the couple of interesting things for me was Gen Design. That's the studio founded. Can't forget the gentleman's name, but his studio is the Eco Shadow of the Colossus Last Guardian studio. So a very Sony, close to Sony type studio, now moving in with a new publisher. That to me was the biggest one. Remedy, it didn't surprise me at all, as you've already outlined. Agasicles, there's been quite a bit of cross-pollination there for a while. Playdead, I think, fits in the wheelhouse of what a lot of the stuff I'm seeing kind of come available on the Epic Store. Like it's that kind of indie, kind of artsy type studio. I'm curious, and I apologize for my ignorance, but this 100% development cost, is that a normal thing in the industry? I feel like coming at it from some of the other industries I've worked at, like I know that it's out there, but I also know that it tends to cultivate poor decision making and or laziness on the part of the developer because they don't have any skin in the game. So I don't know. That's kind of an interesting little tidbit for me.
I think the caveat, not necessarily a caveat, but the turn of a phrase there will offer as much as 100%, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it starts off that high in order to start getting some things out the door, but it scales back. I think there's a very good kind of economic psychological mentality there in terms of that kind of personal investment in stake. I also think your question about gen design and more of a Sony PlayStation facing one, that even though this is being published by Epic, it doesn't necessarily mean that it could just be a publishing rights for it on PCs or on computers, and that it could still have Sony as a publisher for consoles. So there's probably some there's a lot of fine print in any of these details, I'm sure, but that seems like there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah, that would be my guess, DB. I'm, I'm assuming that Epic wouldn't be necessarily interested in stomaching the licensing cost to deploy games on PlayStation, but that's just a guess. I guess Swiss 2 on the coverage of the cost, my gut tells me that there would be structures in the gaming industry that are similar to what you see in government contracting, and that there are such things as cost plus fixed fee, where it's I'm going to pay you a certain amount to publish a game, and if you go over that, there's certain thresholds where you need to come back and tell us that you're going to exceed that funding, and you can make a request for more. Because of something, not meeting your expectations. I also assume that there are fixed fee things where they say we're going to cover up to this amount, full stop, and then beyond that you eat whatever costs you go over.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Agasicles, that probably seems like a logical structure for any type of development.
But again, it is a guess, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is. I think in some ways it will give us something new to keep looking at and keep looking forward to in terms of how the PC development scene shifts. Right. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw Valve finally release a game with Half-Life Alyx for VR for the first time in a long time. I guess they're technically re-releasing Artifact at this point. But as Valve is getting back in or kind of dipping in and out, Epic is looking to make some more waves as they continue to build some mindshare within that market as well.
And again, like if you remember back when they announced the Epic Game Store, that was a developer carrot, but they're announcing it to everybody. Remember, if you recall, like that was a big thing with the profit sharing ratio or whatever it was that they tried to discriminate themselves against Valve with. So interesting, like kind of psychology of their mentality when it comes to their advertising.
Yeah, they've definitely taken the tact of trying to distinguish themselves for sure. So we've covered a lot of news stories. We hit on all of our standard platforms. We've got a variety of news. There is a lot more out there that we haven't covered, but that's okay. And by the next time we get around into our deep dive in 2 weeks from now, we'll have a lot more to talk about. And hopefully you will be back with us to join into the conversation. You'll stay engaged with us on social media. You can continue to listen and engage, and we will continue to be ready to talk with you and talk with each other, as we said at the top of the hour, about our experiences. Next week, we are back on Enough to Keep Going with the Game Experience show. This will be the second one for April. Agasicles, you're going to be hosting this. I get to sit in the second chair and not steer and just kind of go along for the ride, point out some oddities along the highway as you drive us down the gaming highway of April 2020. But really what we're going to be driving down is the spring release schedule. We're going to be looking at some of the big games from the spring, or at least the two big games from March, with Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing. I guess maybe we could say that MLB The Show is another big game for March, but our assignment there is to, as we said at the top of the hour, is to go and pick one of those big releases from this final quarter, or final month of the final quarter for games fiscal year, and to compare it back to others within the series. I'm going to look. I've been playing Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm going to go back and dug out a little bit of New Leaf and the original Animal Crossing on the GameCube, and Agasicles, you are playing Doom Eternal, but you're going to also revisit Doom 2016 and maybe some classic ids as well. So lots to talk about next week on Enough to Keep Going. Gentlemen, any final thoughts, any final words before we head out for the night? All right, I will take your silence as tacit support. So, once again, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Agasicles Stamus. Thank you, SwissGuard. What? I was going to call you Osiris Prime. I'm sorry.
I know. We
I was
missed the beard.
stumbling around. You know what it was? Is I was thinking of Animal Crossing, and Osiris is going to be on next week to talk about his experiences. So, getting the brain all mixed up and jumbled, but fortunately, I've had you guys to keep me supported, not only tonight, but week after week, day after day. I appreciate the community that is Enough to Keep Going. Those of you listening, please feel free to engage with us. Follow on Discord. That Agasicles, we are streaming here on Discord, and a variety of ways to continue to stay engaged with us. Remember, in a time of stress, in a time of anxiety, in a time of real-world fear, and we can do our best to take care of each other. We can do our best to take care of ourselves, to enjoy our friends and family, and enjoy the games we play. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.